Good evening, everyone. My name is Amarilis Rodriguez, and I'm here to share my story with all of you. I grew up in Camden, New Jersey, a city that seemed to only offer a few options to my peers and me: jails, institutions, and death. I felt like I was trapped and held captive by the boundaries of Camden. As of 2012, Camden School's graduation rates were among the lowest in the state at 49.27%. Even more alarming, in the same year, Camden hosted 67 homicides. This included my cousin, Louis Colon. I'm here to talk about my truth and my experiences with our public institutions as a felon, as a scholar, and more importantly, as a woman of color. The incarceration of women is often relegated in the larger conversations about today's prison industrial complex. There are far fewer of us incarcerated compared to men, but I would argue that our experiences as women warrant greater scrutiny. I am talking about mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and sisters that are affected by the escalating problem of mass incarceration. I find it exceptionally fortuitous that Piper Kerman's book, called The Eye of a Savvy Network Producer named Genji Cohen. As a result, millions of insulated citizens are more aware of the systemic oppression against women, especially women of color like myself, in prisons across this country. I spent 2.5 years serving time under the New Jersey Department of Corrections for making a choice that seemed to me at the time as the only option to survive the depravity faced by women of color in cities like mine. Despite the stereotypes, I grew up with a hardworking mother and father and a slew of supportive family members. But there was still something lacking in my life. In retrospect, what was missing was hope, opportunity, and a sense of safety. I reached a time in my life where I realized I had nowhere to go, when I cared about nothing or no one, and I could care less about getting caught committing crimes. My despair left me literally out of control. I was even grateful to be incarcerated or put in programs built to modify my uncontrollable behaviors instead of losing my life like many others that I knew. Even with all of that appreciation I felt towards my life, I must have still had 1 ounce of hope that was not stripped by my despair. I lugged that modest amount of desire into prison with me, immediately looking for something to grasp, something to better myself. There were literally no educational opportunities for myself and many other women. The prison officials decided that I would be better off learning a vocational trade, in my case sewing uniforms for other prisoners, than it would be for me to acquire an education. The revolving door of jails and institutions began to feel very real, and I watched it spin around in my head as I sewed khakis day after day. I was terrible at that too. No one ever wanted to wear my shirts. I served my time very similar to what Piper Kerman describes, but at the time I lacked the insight and analytical ability to understand what was happening to me. It was terrible, but it was normal. 2 factors saved me, and I know that I am one of the very select and lucky few. First, my fellow sisters behind the wall, including my current partner, who supported me in this dark time. Second, a special program that saw something in me and opened the doors to education. I was introduced to the Next Step program at Essex County College, launching my academic career, and eventually to my saving grace when I was admitted to Rutgers University's Mountain View program, a program with a simple mission: reduce recidivism by helping ex-felons obtain an education. It was nothing more than faith and access to these programs that guided me to this almost utopian life that I am privy to now. It is only that I had access to these programs that I am standing here today, appealing to you to help take action and give attention to this massive problem of incarceration of Black and brown people. Take with me the necessary steps to make a college education available and accessible to all formerly incarcerated individuals with the desire and grit to accomplish what me and many others have already, and to go beyond. This is no easy feat. Most of us don't have advocates like I did to get us in the door, and in some cases drag us through our own self-doubts and setbacks. Our sentences, whether they be 6 months or 16 years, often turn into life without admission, employment, or dignity because of the felony we carry. Many people still don't believe my peers and I belong here at Rutgers, that we don't deserve the ability to learn, grow, and contribute. I am not any smarter today than I was in Camden. However, the support and resources allotted to me through the Mountain View program were incomparable. Never have I felt the urgency to succeed and completely attain all of my dreams, many beyond the scope of my own imagination. I learned that the oppression that I and many of my peers encountered in Camden also happens on a global scale. I took what I learned and shared it with people from my community so that they would know that limitations, while real, could be dismantled. I talked to professors and peers about the prison industrial complex and the havoc that that system wreaks on our community and economy. I had experiences that made me value my worth as a woman of color. More importantly, to me through Douglas was the ability that I gained to contextualize my life and experiences in Camden, in prison, as a lesbian and a Latina woman through a lens that empowered and made sense, finally. As a Douglas woman, I learned to analyze how women's voices are often drowned out in public discourse, and how, even when we have the opportunity to speak, we mute ourselves after years of internalizing the false truth that our experiences don't matter or are less important than those of men. I am inspired by the example of Piper Kerman. Not only does she speak her own truth, but the truths of thousands of women of color, those of meager backgrounds, and those of alternative sexual orientations that are too often ignored. I want to thank her because she spoke my truth and now people are listening. And of course, Rutgers is where I learned how women like Piper Kerman could use their inherent privilege and access to be vocal about the need for education in prison and institutions like Rutgers through programs like Mountain View. You all have the opportunity to be a part of this amazing and life-changing movement. I challenge you to take up this cause and push for educational opportunities, support programs like NJ STEP that are teaching college and prisons across the state, Next Step at Essex County College, and the Rutgers Mountain View program right here. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Piper Kerman, the author of the New York Times bestseller, Orange is the New Black, My Year in a Woman's Prison. This eye-opening memoir recounts the year that Piper spent in the Danbury Correctional Facility for a crime she had committed 10 years prior as a very brief, very careless dalliance in the world of drug trafficking. Compelling, moving, and often hilarious, the stories of the women she met while in prison raised issues of friendship and family, mental illness, behavior, the role of religion, and the almost complete lack of guidance for life after prison. Her story shows the importance of making choices, overcoming adversity, and turning the unthinkable into a life-changing experience. Her memoir was the inspiration behind the critically acclaimed TV series of the same name, which has been renewed for a second season. Piper has delivered lectures to campuses across the country, along with groups that include the American Correctional Association's Disproportionate Minority Confinement Task Force, federal probation officers, public defenders, justice reform advocates and volunteers, and formerly and currently incarcerated people. She serves on the board of the Women's Prison Association. Ms. Piper Kerman.